Thank you for tuning in and welcome to Errand Painting. Today we're gonna paint Poxwalkers as requested by Red Versa, and I think this is gonna be a lot of fun. I painted up these 6 a couple of days ago, and basing my paint scheme heavily on a guide that came in White Dwarf, which is pretty much the same guide as you find on Warhammer TV's Painting Poxwalkers video, not the Ready for Battle one, the other one. And while this is a really fast approach, it also makes the overall unit seem a bit dull, so that is one of the things we're going to address today as well. The article I'm talking about is of course this one, and we're gonna disregard all the guides for clothing and equipment because there are definitely faster ways to get around that. But the skin is definitely solid and will be the base inspiration. So before we start, I'd like to talk a bit about my thoughts on this and how to get the result we're going for in a hurry. Because as I mentioned in several videos now, I am working on several armies, trying to make sure that I have a good variety of miniatures for battle reports, which is slowly becoming my new passion. I only filmed one so far, and I learned a lot, especially about not saying that unit will shoot into those guys, but actually use the unit names and not just filming everything, because it took me hours to edit afterwards. But enough about that. When painting units like these, could be zombies, skeletons, goblins, low detail, high numbers units, and not that the miniatures are not detailed, but we're not going to spend a ton of time painting up each little detail. We're gonna use different effects to quickly make the details pop out. I suggest that you mount them on a piece of painting stick with poster putty and then prime them all together in batches of 5. Works best for me. If you find that 5 is too much, give 3 a go. If you find that you can handle 5 easily, try to up the number to 6, 7 or even 10. But for me, 5 seems to be the right amount, and then I try to make my mind see this as a single miniature, because that means if you're doing 20 Poxwalkers, it'll be 4 miniatures, and that is much less daunting to get into than 20 miniatures. We're gonna rely heavily on washes, just like in the guide we just saw, but unlike what I've seen most people do, I suggest that you, for every batch of how many miniatures you have in your stick, try to vary it a bit, because while we usually try to get visual interest on a model, these models are, well, they're plague zombies, and we don't want each and every one of them to pop out and be a character. We want them to be a shambling horde, so that visual interest can be made on the unit instead, giving them a united appearance due to bases, clothing, and a few common colors, but then have some varied colors on them, on their skin, making their tentacles or warts and blisters slightly different from each other. And then when you put them on the table, you just mix up the different batches you've painted, and you'll get this this shambling mixed horde look. Today we're gonna paint 10 for the sake of the video, but I suggest that you just take all the Poxwalkers you have. If you have the Dark Imperium box, you'll have 20. If you have No Fear, you'll have 10. If you're an eBay-oholic, you'll probably have 60 to 100. I currently have 36, and I'll need a few more, I think, just because I want to be able to have a proper shambling horde. So I'll probably attack eBay at some point. But yeah, as we have two sticks, I'll do my best to vary the colors on those to give you an idea of what I mean by giving the horde some variation. And then when we put it on the table with the 6 guys already painted, you can hopefully see my point there. But enough about that. Let's get to painting. Right, so here we have them. I'm gonna use a hairdryer to shorten down the dry times. You don't have to do this, of course, but I find that it helps my impatient self when using many washes. So, take this one away. So, for the first unit here, we're going to give them the first wash of Raglan Flesh Shade, exactly like in the guide, and then for the other one, we're going to do something else. I suggest you use a palette. I like these because they're cheap, they're easy to clean, and I have a whole stack of them just because then I don't have to clean them as often. And control here is important, because if you overwash, so to say, you can end up with some really globby bad results. So I get some Flesh Shade out on the palette, and then I simply start washing all the skin. And this Flesh Shade is pretty old, and I only thinned it down with a tiny bit of water, so it'll give a pretty strong color. If you want the strong color and your Flesh Shade doesn't give it in the first go, you just add another layer afterwards, of course. And I make sure to also hit all the horns and tentacles at this stage, because it'll give us a nice base color to work from. It can be a bit tricky to spot if certain areas are covered by clothing, but when that happens and you're not sure, then simply wash over it, because you'll have an easier time covering up the clothing with a base color than you will go back and re-establish the skin color. And I'm going to continue doing the same on the entire line. So now that they have all been given a Flesh Shade, I'll put these aside to dry and pick the other ones. But before I do, I just want to mention, notice the small craters in the skin. The wash have a tendency to bubble up and not get in there, so it's well worth your time to take a moment and go around the minis to make sure that you've got them all, because they will stand out later. And even though we're going to apply several layers of different washes, it's not unheard of that they'll end up staring at you all white once you think you're done. So, just to do something else with the other unit, I'm going to take 1 part Severum Sabia and mix it with 1 part Estonian Camo Shade for their skin color. And just like before, I'm just gonna wash all over the models with this to give them a nice base color to work from. Then it's just a matter of carrying on across the entire end. So, now that I'm happy with the skin colors, it's time to start adding some variation. And for these ones, we're gonna go again with what the guide told us, and use some Estonian Camo Shade. And this will be for the horns and all the bubbly posture thingies, but not the tentacles. So try to stay clean of those, because we want those to be another color. And once again, I load it up on my palette and add a little bit of water just to make it flow easier. A lot of people would use medium here, and so would I sometimes, but for this kind of project I find it unnecessary. So it's just a matter of taking out the horns, and when you get to the biles, I'd suggest switching to a smaller brush. And you really don't have to be neat at this stage. It's just basically blocking in the areas. Even if it might feels like, even if it sometimes might feel like you're just, well, watching the green all over the place. See here, there is one of those white little dots that escaped me. So I'll be extra careful to get that one now. And once the camo shade has dried, I'll give it another coat, but just at the horns. I know that the Warhammer TV guide, Duncan says to also do the center of the boils, or still not sure what to call them, but I won't do that. I'll do something else later instead. So I finished with the camo shade, and as you can see, the horns have gotten an extra coat to darken them down. A good trick for stuff like this is to turn them upside down when they're drying, especially if you're using a head wrap, because that will prevent massive poolings to ruin the transition between the horn and the skin. And now that I'm happy with this, we'll take the other 5. Again, we're gonna do something different for these, so I'm gonna take some Agrax Earthshade and paint in the horns, but not the blisters, boils. And once again, I'm gonna give the horns 2 coats, but this time I'm first gonna cover the horns entirely and then just the outermost half of them. And if you're in doubt if somebody is and if you're at some point in doubt whether something is a horn or a tentacle, just pick one, and then I suggest picking the other next time you do the same mini for more variation. You see, this has a nasty habit of pooling towards the bottom, so help it up towards the tip, and again dry them upside down. And on this spiky fella, I'll count these bone plates as horns too, to make it all as simple as fast as possible. So a lot of brown on here. With the brown done, we'll stay on these for another wash. This time it is Berg Crimson. And that will be for the tentacles and all the blisters and boils. And after the first coat, I'll go over the tentacles again, but leave the smaller details with just a single coat. And even though we want the color to be much stronger on the tentacles, resist the temptation to just glob it on and reinforce them when you come back, because we don't want them to get that thick, glassy color that shades can give if you go too overboard with them. While that can be preferable in some cases, like especially when doing Nurgle stuff, it's not really good in this case. So once again, I'll work my way all the way around it and be back. And now they look like this. And with that, we're done with the initial wash fest for these 5. These guys, however, still need a bit of attention, and still following the White Dwarf guide, I'm gonna take some Duchy Violet, and that'll be for all the tentacles, as well as some random areas to break up the skin color a little. This guy that doesn't really have tentacles will add a little bit down here. And some of his on his nasty grin. And lower jaw. And a bit out here to break it up a bit. . 'Cause And once these are dry, I'll come back in and once again just reinforce the tentacles slightly. Not giving them a full coat, just where I think they're too pale. And after that, we're ready to start to add some paint that is not a wash. With that, the poxwalkers themselves are almost complete and it's time to dress them up. And first of all, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna paint all the cloth on the miniatures with Rakoth flesh. So that'll be for stuff like this tabard loincloth, whatever you call it, thing. And I suggest you use a wet palette for this and do your best to get smooth coats, because a rough coat of paint now would really contrast to the surface of the washed area and make it look out of place. So while you should always aim at smooth coats, even more so now, even if it's tempting for speed painting projects to just glob it on and get on with it. It's worth the little extra time. Also on the straps or bandages or whatever it is around his legs here. Now I'll work my way all the way, and now I'll apply that to all 10 minis, and then we'll add the next color. And there we have the Rakoth flesh all done. Next up, I'm gonna take some chocolate brown from Vallejo. You could use whatever brown you prefer when you paint wood and leather and stuff like that. I generally like to combine chocolate brown and flat earth just as my go-to brown color and highlight. But whatever you just usually do when there is a belt or a boot that needs to be brown, use that brown color. And obviously this will be for everything wood and leather. Once again, I'm gonna get it out on my wet palette. And for instance of this guy, I'll start with the belt here. And the boot down here. And all the little pouches and stuff as well. So, just like with the Rakoth flesh, I'm gonna work my way all the way around. And then it's time for to add some metallic color. And to finish off the base coat, I'm gonna take some gunmetal for most of the metallics, and some brassy brass for the bells and the fly icons, and just to give some variation in the metallic. And I'll put both of these on the palette at the same time, and just work my way around and apply it to all the guys. And on more detailed metallic parts like this arm here, I'll add in some brassy brass for the variation of it. And as with the other colors, I'll work my way all the way around, and once I'm done, we are ready to start shading all these new base colors. And with that, we got all the base colors down. So next up, it's time to wash these colors. And for that, we're going back to Aquac Surfshade. And that'll just be an all-over wash on all the clothing, the metal, the leather, you name it. Everything that's not flesh and horns, basically. And you don't have to be super neat here. If a bit of Agrax Earthshade gets on to some of the other areas, it doesn't matter too much. And once it's all been washed, we are ready to get into the final stage of adding some highlights and effects, and then we'll be done. And now for some quick and easy highlighting. We could also easily at this stage pimp up the metallic areas with some Typhus Corrosion and some Razor Rust, but I'm not gonna on these. To keep the video somewhat simple, and I think we've used that technique quite a lot and probably will quite a lot in the future too, so we'll skip that for these 10. Flat Earth to highlight all the wood and the leather, and this will just be a quick edge highlight. You don't have to catch everything, just the most visible. Thin it down probably, and just work around the models, picking out wherever you see fit. So I'll continue on the other 5 and we'll get to the final highlight color before we start adding effects. Now some palette rich flesh, and this will be for the eyes, the teeth, and for highlighting the clothes. And don't worry if the paint gets in between the teeth, because we'll fix that up in a moment with a little amount of wash. That'll teach me to talk while I try to paint a detail. And for the cloth, I'm simply going to do a classic edge highlighting. And of course you can do as much and as little as you want with this color. I like to take some time with this because it gives the miniatures the last definition that I feel is needed to make the paint job look good. You could of course also pick other colors and go around highlighting all the other elements, but I don't think that's necessary for the paint job value we're going for here. You can see when I make a mistake, I just go back to the wet palette, because all the colors we've used previously are still wet under that, and quickly fix it out. So after those very quick highlights, they look like this, and I think that really does a lot for the minis. A final thing I want to do before, as I've mentioned, get into... Oh, I forgot to say, when painting the palette rich flesh, I also pick out any maggots that I come across, but I don't worry too much if I miss one here and there. It doesn't really matter. Next thing I want to do is I want to add a 50-50 mix of Zephyrium Sepia and water over the eyes, the teeth, and the maggots. The reason I thin it down so much is that rather than have it go all out and discolor it, I am just interested in a slight tint around those. And once I've done that, I'm gonna let all the washes completely dry. And again, the hairdryer comes in handy. And after that, I'm gonna paint up the bases and seal them with and seal the models with matte varnish. And then we'll add the before mentioned effects, and we'll be done. I've finished up the bases real quick and given the unit some anti-shine matte varnish from Army Painter. And what I'm gonna do now is play a bit around with a few optional special effects or effect paints. And there are a ton of cool effect paints you can use, and you don't have to be consistent throughout the unit. As with many other things, you can do something on 10 and something on another 10, and then when you mix them up, it'll really likely look very good. Again, think of it as a single model, so you can go for some variation on that. We're gonna use some Blood of the Blood God, some Secret Weapon Sewer Water, and some Knuckles Rod for this one. Other stuff that could be fun to add at this stage would be, of course, as I always like to do, some Typhus Corrosion, some Risa Rust. You could even go with some Nihilach Oxide, this one, for the brass parts, if you felt like that. There is also the Game Effect Vomit from Vallejo. It's also a fun effect to add to something like this. And yeah, pretty much a bunch of cool stuff out there. But as said, for this one we'll stick to the first three. And the first thing I want to add is the sewer water. I'll pop a bit of this out on a palette. And what I'm gonna do with it is that I'm gonna stain the metallic areas here and there. This is, I find, a good way to make gross, nurgly metal without just doing the same as I always do over and over again. So, for instance, on this blade, just gonna start coating, making it thicker towards the tip. And you could do it in reverse, so you made it thicker the other way. As with many things Nurgle, it's a good idea, I find, to be kind of random with it. This is an effect paint, not a wash, so you can treat it a bit differently. Pools are not as bad, for instance. They actually tend to look really good. Oh, rather, it is a wash, but it's an effect wash. On this guy, it seems a good idea to just stab some of this into the recesses and stuff like that. Put some on the cable here. It seems a bit bright and clean. And most importantly with effects, I think, is that you have fun doing them, and the minis can definitely be tabletop ready before it. And as I add these after the varnish, you could easily go back and add effects later, or yeah, add some effects and then do some more once you stumble upon something that you really like. For this blade, I think we'll start at the bottom and then draw it slightly upward. Without allowing for the sewer water to completely dry, because we don't care so much about that, we're going on to the knuckle strat. And this I'm gonna use straight out of the pot. And this will be for all the bile, what do you call them, blisters thingies. Especially the big ones, but you can also smear some across when there is a cluster of them. And the skin craters also look quite good if you fill some knuckles right into them. Oh, good. Rose was the word we're going for. And if you put on too much, like I did there, then just use that as a palette for a while you find more good spots. Don't be afraid to use quite a bit of this, but like with everything in weathering, don't overdo it, because there is a lovely paint job underneath, and that is the part we really want people to see. But this is, I find, the absolute fastest way to make these big, round, nasty bulbs look good. And because we've kept the colors muted somewhat throughout the entire venture, the knuckle strat also really has a strong effect, which I really like. And it contrasts, as you can see, pretty well with the pinkish tentacles and saw areas. Actually, while we're here, we might as well put a bit of knuckle strat into the gears of this arm. Just blend it up with the sewer water that hasn't dried yet. That looks quite nice. And like with the maggots and plenty other details in these, if you miss some parts, doesn't really matter. We have it all covered in interesting colors. This has given them a bit more visual interest, I think. Also, I love how the knuckle strat and most other effects are shiny, so when you add them after the varnish, they really contrast. And finally, a bit of blood for the blood god, and this will mainly be for stuff like weapons and the occasional open wound that simply is too good to let pass by. This is a fun effect, but you should really be careful you don't overuse it. I use a worn down slim brush so that I can carefully stipple it, and I don't water it down at all because I want as much control as I can. Many miniatures has been ruined by too much gloss blood effect paint. That's a fact. But that being said, he could do with a bit of red down here just to contrast. As you can see, I'm being much more selective with this color, and not even necessarily adding any to all of them. This guy's belly really deserves some attention. And for this one I'm actually going to use quite a blob on it to get these spikes coated, because I think that would look pretty cool. With that, I'm just gonna let them fully dry, and we'll go and have a look at them. So here we have them, along with their 6 friends that I painted up the other day, and I am really happy with the result. I love how the different colors play well together, unified by bases and the off-white clothing. And I definitely want to keep changing it up and mixing the units a bit. So if you decide to do something like this, please send me a picture and a note about what washes you used, in what order and for what, and I'll show it off and talk about it in an errand update, and will probably draw inspiration for my own Horde. So I hope you found this useful. I hope to get some pictures of your undead plague zombie poxwalker Horde, or at least well, let me know what you think. Please like this video and subscribe if you want me to continue doing this kind of videos. This took a bit longer than my regular painting video, but it was a ton of fun, so I wouldn't mind doing more like this. And also, I should probably mention, I have a Patreon page now, where we are really close to reaching the goal, unlocking a new show called Errand Academy, where I intend to go through all the basics of miniature painting. So if you would like a show like that, it will contain a lot of nice stuff for beginners, but also my take on some of the more advanced techniques in the future, if you just like to expand your knowledge base. So jump over to Patreon and check that out. And even if we already reached that goal, there is probably a new show and a new goal, or something else that you might fancy. But enough about that. If you like the bases I did, I'll do in part 2 of army basing over in my Hobby Tips show. I'll do these exact bases in that show. Once it's up, I'll pop a link, so that should be on the screen now. And other than that, not much else to say than let me know what you think, and take care, and bye bye.